Hello, Ben.
Hey, girl. Hey, girl.
We haven't been in the studio together for like
For a long
age.
time.
I
For a
know,
long
I know.
time.
Last time I feel like we did something live like this, a cat slept on your lap for a while.
Oh, in Oxford.
In Oxford.
Oh, what a gorgeous cat. What
Yeah.
I don't like cats
I know
either,
you
but
don't.
that was like a was a
That's actually
a
this
dog
episode
cat.
is not about cats, but
Yeah.
that was the last time we were together, and we're very excited because we are going to be doing something we haven't done really before.
I
It's like a
know.
little 4-part mini-series.
It's
Are you excited?
It is exciting, isn't it? I feel like it's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also exciting because we're doing it with one of our recurring fave TEDxLondon speakers, Julia Shaw, Dr. Julia Shaw. The doctor's important because we're going to be talking about green crime.
Oh, very interesting.
Very interesting.
Very interesting.
It's based on her new book, Green Crime,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to talk more about that in a bit. But before we get into that, first of all, welcome, Julia. For those of you who don't know who Julia is, first of all, just go watch all her TED Talks because they're really, really good. But also, she's a criminal psychologist at University College London. She's a regular podcast and TV host. As I've said, she's been a TED and TEDxLondon speaker, and she's author of this new book, Green Crime, Inside the Minds of the People Destroying the Planet and How to Stop Them. And before we get into the real stuff, can you just tell us what is a green crime?
Green crime is another term for environmental crime, and it is when you extract or take something out of nature or pollute, so put something into nature that you're not supposed to, and it's breaking a law. So it's not just the earth but bad. It's not just sort of general bad behavior. It's also
Bad
not
crime on the planet. Yeah.
right. It's also
Bad
not
things people do.
exactly bad things people do, which I think people sometimes assume this book is going to be about just like everything bad in general.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I am in fact focusing on things that are crimes,
Yeah.
not just things that we wish
Bad
would stop.
vibes. Yeah.
And I read like a little bit about your bio, but will you tell our listeners a little bit about your background that brought you to this topic and like kind of what you've worked on before?
So I'm a criminal psychologist, and I study why people do bad things. And I'm actually an expert in terms of being an expert witness for courtrooms as well, where I talk about memory. So that's my niche, my
Yep.
particular niche. And so I'm always interested in how people construct realities. And that's something that you'll see throughout this book as well, is that the different ways in which the narratives are controlled around who is at fault for the climate crisis and how we tell these stories about these crimes, both in terms of the perpetrators, but also in terms of what we should do about them. And so narratives is something that I'm always interested in memory and storytelling. And on the other hand, I'm interested in why are people engaging in these things that we all know at this point. No one's like, what? Things might be changing and we should be careful with pollution. Everybody knows.
Yeah, everyone
Even
knows.
if you're like, no matter where you're on the political spectrum, there's some version of that. Even if it's just like saving your local park, you have some interest probably in a clean environment, at least where you live.
But for you personally, I guess, why climate or why green environment? What brought
Why
you to this
do
point?
you care?
'Cause-
Why do I care?
Why do you,
I guess
But I
you
always
could
think
talk
that's an
about a
important
lot. You
question.
could have written about a lot of different things.
Yes.
There's a lot of bad things people are doing in the world right now. A lot. And there's a lot of psychology behind like, why do AI people want to destroy our planet? You know, you could have written about a lot of stuff. Why climate? Why environment?
Because I have always been interested in environmentalism, and I was faced with this black hole of, I don't know, my feed was just back-to-back stories of devastation and everyone doing it wrong. And the overwhelming message I think you get, or at least that I was getting, is no one's doing anything.
Right.
And I was like, well, if no one's doing anything, first of all, why are people still committing these crimes?
Yes.
It's like, again, most people now think about, I mean, research has shown that most people think about the climate emergency at least every week. Most people think about it. Lots of people think about it every day. And so this isn't like this niche topic anymore. And yet you still have people who are like, I'm just going to burn down the rainforest and put some cattle here. And so for me, it's like, that is such a mind flip where you're going, this is also like the criminals who
Like,
are
how
destroying
can
the
you
planet.
know and still...
Well, it's burning down your own home.
Yeah.
Like, they live here
Yeah.
too.
This is not. It's not good for you and bad for us. It's bad for everyone.
It's bad for
Like,
everybody.
Yeah.
And so there's that was drawing me to it. And frankly, I felt surely there's some social science here that can help
Right.
us to understand what's going on. But I didn't know it. And so I wanted to figure out what it is and whether we can use criminal psychology to help us to fight this.
And is it scalable? Is it the same like on the small level to the large level? Like, because that point you just made about like it's their own home and it's like they're doing stuff that's harming them as well. Like, if I don't recycle properly, is there some link there between those two extremes of like maybe like an organised crime ring and a person at home eating the wrong foods or using too much bath water, or because like sometimes you don't see the impact directly. Are those two things linked, or is it a completely different like kind of way that people's brains are working?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So yes.
Never a clear answer.
yeah.
Well, yes, in that it is, for example, what you're saying with not recycling properly. That's often either because you feel overwhelmed and you're not sure, like, I mean, the amount of times that I stand in front of bins and I'm like, which one does
too
this
many
go
bins,
in?
yeah.
Also, like, things are made of multiple things.
Yeah.
Like, the thing I'm holding in my hand
It's
isn't
paper
just
with food
like,
in it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Isn't just one thing. And so where does it go? And so that also leads to what's called wish cycling. Have you heard of this term?
No, this is a good term. What's wish cycling?
Tricycling.
Yeah. Wish cycling is when you put something in a recycling bin hoping that it's recyclable.
Oh my god,
Recyclable.
I do a lot of that. I do a lot of wish cycling.
We all do
That's
a lot of
what I
wish
do,
cycling.
yeah.
And it ends up contaminating the bins, and which means that ultimately a lot of the stuff that we also think can be recycled can't, and it just ends up being burned. And there's a whole subplot to that of how we have always known that plastic was never going to be properly recyclable, and yet we were sold this whole, like, give me a second life as, like, a plastic bottle, which is mostly nonsense. But anyway, the yes is there is a relationship between that and, say, waste crime at scale. And part of that is also ease. That it's easier to just throw things in the general bin or to dispose of things improperly than to do it properly. And that is the same whether you're at home or you're an organized crime network and you are disposing of corporate waste in just like by tossing it into some dump somewhere that is illegal and it just sort of seeping toxic waste into the water. But the no, in terms of why it's not the same and why I think it's really important not to equate it, is that just like, yes, there is a line somewhere between like passive aggression and serial killing, no one would say they are the same.
They're the same thing.
And I think with environmentalism, we often pretend they are.
Right.
And they're not. And this book is about the serial killers of the planet.
Okay.
This is not about
That's a good
someone
line.
who's
Yeah.
kind of like
Yeah.
doing it a bit
Accidentally
wrong
put
by
in there.
accident. Exactly.
Yeah.
This is people doing it at scale on purpose, and they're causing massive destruction.
Yeah.
So 3 years of research has gone into this book, which is significant.
Like a degree.
Yes, it is like a degree. And you did do some courses.
I did. I always did.
Yeah.
I love
I
university.
love a course.
And we have in this series talked to you about 3 of the cases in the book. There are more
There's six big cases.
in the book. Can you talk us through some of the most memorable people you spoke to?
Yeah, one of the most memorable people I spoke with was Cirrus Cam, who is a campaigner for the Environmental Investigation Agency, the EIA, which they're like the spies, undercover agents of the environmental world. And it's actually an NGO, but they end up...
Which is just amazing.
That's
isn't it?
crazy. James Bond works for basically a charity.
Charity.
That's nuts. I
Basically.
wouldn't. But yeah, no,
Yeah,
shout out to them.
And they infiltrate organized crime networks. They expose lots and lots of different kinds of environmental crimes. And she was really interesting because she also is using her job as a psychiatrist. So her background is in psychiatry to elicit behavior change at scale. So she specifically targets messaging around especially wildlife crime and other kinds of crimes to tastemakers. So she'll approach a politician in X country or X place where there's a known issue with a certain kind of wildlife crime. And she'll say, what do you need from us? And basically, what do you want? And they'll say things like, I want to get reelected. I want to, right? The things that politicians want. And they maybe have nothing to do with the planet. But she goes, how do I tailor the messaging that we want you to share so that you get kudos from your
It's
group
smart.
Yeah.
It's smart.
to basically leverage it for what you want. And so she does that. Strategic messaging.
Which is important.
Which is so important. And she taught me also that obviously it's not just facts that people need. They need, how do you sell the story? How do you embed it within the local community? How do you make sure that you're using the right words? If it's for business, if it's for individuals, if it's for, it always depends. And so a lot of this book as well, I kept finding that the tailoring of the messaging is so important. We think, why don't people just change their minds really quickly? But changing your mind is really hard.
Yeah.
And it often is slow.
Otherwise we'd all do it.
Otherwise we all do it the whole time.
I mean, it goes back to what you were saying before. If everyone knows, if everyone thinks about this once a week, knowing is not enough. Awareness is not enough here.
Yeah, you need to understand, and also you need to see the way out. And that's what I keep doing in this book, is I speak with people like Series Cam and Julian Newman, who's the campaigns director at the EIA. And they're these heroes, basically, who are doing this on behalf of the planet at scale, internationally. And without them, we just wouldn't know nearly as much. Yeah. And actually, in terms of the EIA, if anyone's interested in learning about these various issues, whether it's waste crime or animal issues with overfishing, whatever it is you're interested in environmentally, they have reports on everything.
Wood.
They're an incredible resource.
I'm really going to go and search wood on that website as soon as we're done, and make sure I don't have any illegal wood in my house.
Or at least what kinds of wood are most likely to be.
Exactly. Just because I feel like there's something about accidentally doing something like this that is really painful to me.
Uncomfortable.
It makes me feel like it's ignorance. It's like the information is there. We know the thing is happening. I just want to make sure I'm not complicit.
I disagree.
Okay.
I don't think it's ignorance. I think that the architects of our environments we talked about this, the hostile architects of choice.
Yes.
And I think if you aren't being given that information, and or somehow illegal activities being snuck in, laundered in, wood, into legal things, so you're just going to a shop, you assume there's some sort of safeguarding to make sure they're not selling illegal stuff. If you just saw cocaine on the shelf, you'd also be like, wait a minute.
It's true. It is true. But I think it's more that just...
I'm allowed to get that then.
I think it's like...
Exactly, but it's in a shop. So I can buy this.
It's like different levels. I always think it's like different levels of responsibility. I think that you can't automatically know, but now that you know, you can't unknow. Now that we've had this conversation, I now know this, and if I really care about this thing, I have to I want to align my actions and my beliefs.
Yes, so I agree with that you should try and align your actions and beliefs. And knowing can help you to fight some of this stuff as well. I mean, for fish crime, the easiest thing you can do is just don't eat salmon and tuna. Don't eat the big fish often, in the sense that we're also overfishing the ones that are the most popular. You can look at, there's publications on what fish are currently overpopulated, that if you eat them, you're actually culling the population a good way in the oceans, potentially. I know, obviously, there's different views on whether we should eat fish at all, but if you are eating fish, then there's more ethical ways of doing it. But I would never, and I think this has been the mass con of our decade, is the consumer's fault.
Individual responsibility is a lie.
It's a lie. We can't possibly know all of the things that go into basically anything we consume, because everything is made up of so many different things. But that's why regulation is important. That's why it has to be top down. That's why the safety has to be in place before it gets to you. When you're making hundreds of decisions a day. There's no way you're sitting in a supermarket going every single piece and the packaging
decision
and the inside and the right.
There's
not
an
even
app
decision
for that, though, isn't there? People actually do that. Not me.
There are some people.
Couldn't be me, but
you talk
but
about...
they shouldn't have to.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the problem, is by even talking about it on an individual basis, we are shifting the blame onto the wrong person in a way that is not going to be scalable. Yeah. And we are basically letting the people who are creating this off the hook.
Get away with it, yeah.
So this is something you have in the book, this idea, though, because we were just saying about regulation. And one of the people we get to talk about with you is a regulator.
Alberto Ayala.
Exactly. And we talk about him as being this hero, this kind of unsung hero, the regulator. Yeah. But throughout the book, you have individuals that you've termed as capable guardians. And I love this term. Tell us a bit more about that. Is that you?
No. No, of course that wasn't me.
Was there an end?
Okay, tell us a bit more about capable guardians.
So capable guardian is a term from something called routine activity theory, which is a criminological theory.
Routine activity theory. All right, take us through it.
That was too many words too quickly.
I'm getting my coffee. Go.
Capable guardians is an idea that comes from
routine activity theory.
Routine activity.
You can call it RAT.
Okay,
rat. From rat.
Yeah, from Ratatouille.
From Ratatouille. And routine activity theory says that there are three things that you need for a crime to be committed. One is a possible victim. One is a motivated offender. And three is a lack of a capable guardian. And you need all of them. And so if you change, if there's no victims or potential victims, then no crime. If there's no people who want to commit crimes, there's no crime. If there's a capable guardian in place, there's no crime. And by capable, I don't just mean like someone standing there watching you. I mean, that can be a capable guardian. Sure. So we know, obviously, police presence in communities, there's lots of important conversations going on around like what policing means and who it's for. But it is true that you're less likely to commit a crime right in front of a police officer than if that police officer isn't there.
Unless you're hard. Unless you're an absolute hard nut. Come on. Yeah, no.
Right. So
you're correct. Yeah. Continue.
Because especially if you think that police officer can't be bribed. And the idea is there will be consequences now. And so a capable guardian is really important for environmental crimes as well, because we have these wide open natural spaces where there is often a question of like, is anyone even watching? Is it even... Are people even able to see what's going on here? And that's where things like satellite imaging comes in. That's where, there's all kinds of tech solutions, but also just rangers on the ground and police officers actually being there. And so having a capable guardian who's both able to detect the crimes, but also then does something about them. And there is some consequence that makes it less likely for people to commit it, like the police officer standing in front of someone. That is important. And
so capable guardians can be, it sounds like we're on a spectrum of police to researchers, maybe? Is there...
I guess anyone could be a capable guardian, right? Or do they have to be viewed as one by a potential perpetrator?
Yeah, so they have to be seen as guardians by a potential perpetrator. So yes, we can all be capable guardians, but we aren't all capable guardians.
Yeah. You have to put on the mask and be
tangential question?
Batman.
Yes, you have to put on the mask. Yeah, like no one's looking at Bruce Wayne and thinking, I don't need to do a bad thing in front of you.
I can't steal this lady's necklace.
Or this burn down this forest.
Yeah.
The first thing in the rat theory, which is that there needs which is that, just remind me what it was.
A potential victim?
Yeah, so the first thing in this theory, the rat theory, that there needs to be a potential victim. I know this is a tangent, but I have to ask it. Is this why, like, dehumanizing people or making something just like an animal, for example,
objectifying,
not valuable? Is that part of this theory? Like, if you don't view them as a victim, you then cannot commit a crime?
So because it's a criminological theory, it doesn't really go into the psychological stuff.
Okay.
What you're talking about with dehumanization and sort of how we think about it with animals as well, that they're not really creatures.
Yeah, or like even forests, you know.
Yeah,
commodifying.
Like if you think about something, like if something cannot be a victim, then you cannot commit a crime against it.
But that's different. So that's not a likely victim. That is a complete conceptual shift of this isn't a victim, and this is, and you. That's where you move into issues of ownership,
right?
And this is mine, this is ours, and that can be this is mine, this is ours. You could even, if you go back in time a bit to like the 1600s, you've got the Portuguese basically being like, God gave us this, and so it's ours to do with as we want.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
And then they weaponize that also against indigenous peoples, and we're like, but like we're here now, so it's ours now.
Yeah.
And so like you see the sort of hybrid of maybe there is like a hint of religiosity that's driving some of that entitlement. But then again, I also meant people like Susan Smith, who is an environmental lawyer in the United States. And she was talking about how her faith specifically pushed her into law and environmental law because she wanted to protect the resources that God gave us. So that entitlement versus guardianship, that can go both ways for lots of reasons. But the most important thing that we have is psychological ownership over a place and a resource. And it's that if we are going to think of things as owned, that at least we feel like it's something that is home, that it's ours, that it's ours to protect.
Yeah.
Even better, you would argue, and a lot of indigenous peoples would argue, is that it's not yours to own. You are part of nature, you're part of this. It shouldn't be that kind of transactional interaction at all.
I do think this idea of psychological ownership, even though I do agree with you that that's a better place to get to, is a really interesting concept for me. I think it's one of the things that stands out from our conversations because it feels like a stepping stone. It feels like a stepping stone for me as someone in a city to be able to get to that feeling of being part of, not apart from nature, is this idea of like, how do I...
You're not in nature.
Yeah, so how do I like create psychological ownership as a way to feeling part of nature? Anyway, again, tangent, but fascinating in the conversation we had, and it's been like rattling around my brain. Something else in the book are 6 pillars, and we throughout the last 3 episodes we've kind of hinted at these 6 pillars of green crime. Can you tell us what they are?
Yes. So the 6 pillars of green crime I came up with because I was going through all of these environmental crimes, and I kept thinking, what's the pattern? And maybe that's just me trying to force things into something, but
we like boxes here.
Yeah, we like
sometimes.
patterns.
Certain
patterns.
patterns. We like certain patterns.
And I was feeling...
Also, sorry, did you create the term green crime?
No.
Or that already exists?
That already existed.
Okay,
So
cool.
green crime is a term from criminology.
Okay.
And social scientists in general use it sometimes. Lawyers prefer the term environmental crime. But I like green crime because it sounds like true crime.
Yeah,
And that is very much what this book is trying to be.
Phonetically, it's close. Like, yeah.
It's true crime, but make it
pillars
green.
You did make up. You did come up with.
Yes.
invent.
So this exactly the 6 pillars I came up with, and they were also actually based off of a criminological theory, which was looking at the antecedents of crime. And so it's like the idea of why do crimes happen? And much like with routine activity theory, which we were just talking about, where you need a potential victim, a capable guardian, or lack of capable guardian, and a motivated offender. Criminology also talks about how there's these factors that make it more likely that a crime will be committed, like that there's just stuff like the example is often used of like you're walking past a car and like something's just like readily available and it's sort of like tempting you and like temptations need to be there needs to be a lack of, again, a capable guardian, there's system failures, there's impunity. And so I took that and I turned it into the psychological version of that, because criminologists work with systems, whereas typically, and psychologists work with individuals. And so this book as well sort of goes between the two, but I always bring it back to individuals, because ultimately it's not systems who are destroying the planet, it's people. And I think we need to understand the people, because otherwise it gets into this nebulous thing of who or what is a system.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, they're people.
Yeah.
And so the 6 pillars of green crime are ease, impunity, which is either actual impunity, so you're getting away with things, or perceived impunity.
Yep.
There's greed, which is the one that everyone jumps to. There's rationalization, which is, I'm not really that bad, or, some sort of excuse that you make for yourself often that you might believe. Then there's conformity, which is everyone else is doing it too, and so it doesn't really matter. And then there's the last one, which is desperation. So to me, those are the 6 pillars, and I call them pillars because I don't think of them as hierarchical. I think they're all sort of present, and if you tumble any of them, a lot of these systems, and now we're back to systems, of green crime will not be possible.
Okay.
So if you don't have impunity, if you don't have desperation, if you don't have vulnerable people you can exploit, if you don't have any one of them, and you could typically take down the whole thing.
What's interesting is that none of them are being evil.
Yeah, none of them are being
like,
an arsehole.
None of them is like, I am a bad person and therefore I just do these things.
No, but I'm very
Maybe
anti
greed.
the term
Yes.
evil, even though I wrote a
Yes,
book called
yes.
Making Evil.
But I do think like there's a feeling, do you know, and this I guess is not limited to green crime, but I'm sure you come across it a lot, which is this thing of like, when we hear about these horrible things being done, we're so affected by them, we're so disgusted by them, that we just think, well, those people are just evil. Those people are just bad. Like, and I've always felt like I understand that gut. Like, I also will see things in the world and just think, these people are bad people. How could they do this?
Oil executives are bad people. In my mind.
In your mind.
Yeah. Like, I think I would venture to say that there are heads of state who I feel this way about. But I also know that is not helpful, because it does not allow us to ever really understand or prevent, or so is part of these 6 pillars to help us move away from this just like, these people are bad people, they're doing bad things,
and it's always just greed.
Yes.
So the subtitle,
because it is there, but it's not the only pillar, and it's not hierarchical. Yeah.
Well, in green crime is now subtitled Inside the Minds of the People Destroying the Planet and How to Stop Them. But my alt subtitle was It's Not Just Greed. Green crime, it's not just greed.
Yeah.
And there is that caricature of the environmental criminal, which often we think of as the heads of like CEOs or heads of certain companies, actually, rather than organized crime bosses and all the kinds of perpetrators I'm talking about in the book. And I wrote the book partly because this is something I was seeing, is as someone who's written a book on evil, which was deconstructing things that we often term evil. The whole point of the book was to say we need to stop dehumanizing the perpetrators of crime and instead understand why they're actually doing this. Because it's really easy to say this serial killer, this sexual offender, this whatever is evil. And that's the end of the conversation, because what you're saying is this person is so different from me that I don't need to bother to understand them, because I never will. Yeah. Instead of going, why did this person actually commit the crime, so that we can prevent it?
Yeah.
And the same is true in environment.
Right?
There's discomfort, and in environmental crime you have exactly the same, where there's a really quick, possibly even more so, I think, because we have less true crime about environmental crime.
There's something in me
dehumanizing.
that feels that kind of position of understanding does something to impede justice. Do you know what I mean? Like, for me, there's a feeling of like, I don't care why you did it. I just want punishment. Like, I know there's also another part of me that kind of feels that that's not correct. But is that like some kind of weird psychological phenomenon that happens in the mind of an onlooker to some kind of crime that's happening, where you think, I don't know, is understanding, does it let people off the hook, you know?
To not call them evil. I think it's, I can understand where you're coming from, also because the sort of tough on crime view also often stems from this, right? Of like, you need to punish them, you need to also send a message to society that we don't stand for this kind of behavior. Exactly. This isn't okay. And you want to dish out this term and be like, no, this isn't just bad, this is evil, this is beyond bad. So I can understand why this conversation happens a lot of, don't we need these words? But I mean, as someone who is also quite skeptical of prisons because they don't have the intended effects that I think we should have, which is making society safer, basically ever. Even the idea that we like put people in prisons and go, well, we've tackled violence. It's like, no, you've just put it into a house. And now the violence is just all there. And then they come out and there's more like, what? You haven't solved anything. You've just sort of
paused it for us.
Paused it, paused it for yourself, kind of.
Increased it because all of the people who are perpetrating violence are now experiencing more violence.
Right. Which makes them worse. And most people will be released from prison at some point, which makes them again a risk to you. So like it's a really bad system, I think, most of the time. Not to say that. Anyway,
it's a whole episode.
Yeah, it's a whole episode. But for me, I care more about what motivates people and to have the conversation around how did they get here? Because I also think every single one of us is capable of engaging in crimes. And that includes environmental crimes. And I think if you don't try to empathize with and understand and reconstruct the steps that someone took psychologically and otherwise and practically to get to the position they're in terms of committing an environmental crime, then you are not going to notice when you are going down that same path.
Yeah.
And what I care about is saving the planet. I like this whatever justice means. That's sort of this hazy thing anyway. And I don't really care about it.
It's not a finger pointing activity.
No, I just care about stopping it.
Remember when we first started? When we first started this podcast, Ben, you were always like, I just want to point the finger.
Yeah, I just need to know who the person is. Like, just name the person and let's hate them. But
you get that in my book. You do get people you can point at.
Okay, good. I will read it.
There are specific individuals. I don't call them evil, though, notably.
So what's interesting is you talk about organized crime in the book and corporate. Like take us through some of the I guess categories maybe of who we're looking at here, because if it's not just all the heads of fossil fuel companies, which I'm devastated by actually, that the whole book is not just about them.
Is there any head of a? There is one head of a fossil fuel company.
There is. He is there. I checked. But like, will you take us through some of the people you found who were committing these crimes?
Yeah, I think as well, I wanted to not just write a book about white collar crime, which ends up being, again, where the conversation often takes us in terms of environmental crime. And what I found surprising is that there are these organized crime groups that are involved, and sometimes it is in fact the same people who do drug smuggling and people smuggling and weapon smuggling. They also engage in like wildlife crime and smuggling of various kinds of endangered wood or animals. But it's also that, so in addition to this sort of gang-like element, and you get people with AK-40s, you get like fights between rangers. Rangers on the front lines are getting killed. They're also killing people who are trying to poach the animals. I mean, it's this real, some would say warfare. A war. And then you've got illegal fishermen. You've got people on the high seas who are basically pirates who are just draining the ocean of fish. And I spoke with Peter Hammerstead, Captain Peter Hammerstead, who is, this is a good name.
Captain Peter Hammerstead.
It's like his whole life he was born.
Captain, yeah.
They named him. His parents named him to be a captain.
One of the few people who's arrived at destiny.
To the rescue. But he is very much one of the heroes in this book. I mean, it's obviously a big word, but one of the capable guardians.
Yes.
Who is the captain of this ship. And he's part of an organization called Sea Shepherd, which was founded by the co-founder of Greenpeace. And the idea was to get eyes on the oceans. Right. And initially, quite a lot of what they were tackling was whaling, illegal whaling, which you very much associate, right, with like early days of Greenpeace?
Yeah,
I do anyway.
Yes.
And
I thought you were going to say with Moby Dick.
Well, that too, but
whaling.
Fighting whaling.
Exactly. But I do. I think Greenpeace has a few things that it's iconic for, and fighting whaling is definitely one of them.
It's one of them, exactly. And so Sea Shepherd was also originally mostly involved in that, but also other fish crimes. They're called fish crimes.
Which is a serious matter for anybody listening at home.
It does make me think of a little fish holding a gun.
Yeah.
I also, every time I hear it, sing na 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 fish cry. Anyway,
that is a whole
remix,
show,
man.
and you heard it here first.
Yeah.
But Sea Shepherd and Captain Hammerstead have this ship called the Bob Barker, which is named after a talk show host of The Price is Right in the States.
Barker.
The Bob Barker.
Bob Barker, right?
Yeah. Come on, The Price is Right.
The Price is Right.
Come on down.
And he bought the ship for the organization.
Oh,
that's why it's named that.
That's so sweet. There's another reason to like Bob.
And on the Bob Barker, Captain Peter Hammerstead chased a notorious fishing vessel called the Thunder.
Ooh.
And they had Interpol who was helping them, and I spoke with the Interpol agent who was helping on the case. I spoke with the Captain Peter Hammerstead who was doing this chase through the Antarctic waters for 110 days until the illegal fishermen ultimately sank on purpose their own ship. And
to get rid of the evidence.
And a couple of the crew went on board the ship that was already sinking to get the evidence. And so they had to take on the crew. So they'd been following this enemy ship, if you will, for 110 days. They sink their own boat. What happens when you're in the middle of the ocean and your boat starts to sink? You put out a mayday call. Yeah. It's maritime law that you have to respond to a mayday call as the closest vessel. And who's the closest vessel?
Yeah.
The Bob Barker, the one chasing them. So they had to take on this crew of like 40 people, and they were like cutting off like the
really
different
wish
ladders.
Those of you who are listening to this podcast and not watching it could see Ben's face.
Sorry.
they were cutting off the ladders so they couldn't like climb between the different decks. They brought in their sister ship to like make sure they created a floating citadel, is what they said, where they had to like contain this huge crew of
criminals,
or people they were chasing at least on their ship, and then bring them to shore. And meanwhile, crew from their ship was climbing onto this sinking ship. Like, this is a huge ship that's sinking.
You don't want to be caught in it.
You don't want to be caught in it. And they're just like grabbing all the USB sticks and they literally take like a frozen fish, a Patagonian toothfish, which is what these guys were fishing, also known as Chilean sea bass, which you might have eaten. And they're taking out this frozen fish, which
I don't eat seafood, but I've seen it on the menu.
And this fish ends up going to Bremen in Germany, and they can't break the chain of custody for this fish, because like with police evidence, you can't like let it out of police custody,
right?
Because then it could be tampered with or contaminated, get lost. And so this fish is being held by the German police force, and the Interpol agent has to fly to Germany to pick up this fish, and they're basically traveling with all eyes on the fish at all times.
Was the fish frozen the whole time?
Yeah. But I think it's such a funny like image of having this Interpol agent who normally deals with other kinds of severe organized crime as well, like making sure that he's in custody of this fish at all times.
This is crazy. This sounds like a comic book that I read. This is like pirates and fishes, and this is nuts.
It's mad. But Captain Peter Hammerstead and Sea Shepherd really made sure that these guys were held accountable and that they stopped pulling these fish out of the seas and using these incredibly destructive fishing techniques.
Being a pirate and getting caught by a ship.
I mean, you know what is cool about this?
It has a shark face painted on it as well.
But you know what's cool about this book, I think, about the stories you tell, and I'm sure you've done this on purpose, but I just want to name it, is that the crimes are all like, you're just kind of like, ugh, but they're success. Like, they are stories where we both can learn from them, but also things have been, in some cases, things have been stopped.
In all of them.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm thinking an oil spill still happened, but like, you know, with the exception, but still, like, they are success stories. I would classify them as wins. I would classify them as things that help us understand that it's not inevitable that these things just happen and there's nothing we can do about it.
In every single one of these 6 cases, there are remarkable twists and turns. I think.
Well, as we have discovered,
and
we don't even talk about the fish case in our episodes.
Oh my gosh! Why didn't we talk about that one?
You gotta read the book,
What
guys.
other stories
You
are
gotta
not
read
in
the
there?
book.
What-
You gotta read the
yeah.
book.
And in addition to that, you learn about these worlds of the people who are fighting for the planet in
Right.
very different ways,
Yeah.
in very different contexts. And you're right that the categories of crimes in all of these, I mean, the reason I chose these 6 cases also that they represent different kinds of environmental crimes. So we've got the emissions crime chapter, so air and air pollution. Then you've got deforestation and biodiversity loss and the murder of environmental defenders. Then you've got overfishing. You've got the chapter on mining and illegal gold mining. You've got the chapter on oil and gas and oil spills. You've got the chapter on wildlife crimes, so animals. And so the idea was that I'm taking you through these different kinds of nature as well. And you also meet these different kinds of capable guardians throughout who work in jobs that you maybe didn't realize existed. I didn't know existed.
And there were a lot more, right? You could have included.
Oh,
It
there were
wasn't
so
like
many
you were
more.
just like, oh, there's only 6 crimes ever.
No, but what I liked about these is that they needed to be quite meaty because they're big chapters, like they're meaty chapters, and I can get into some of the legal stuff and the history of the ideas of how do we think about protecting the environment now? Why do we think that some things are okay to destroy and others are not? How do we get to laws that protect the environment? And some of the backgrounds of those are really weird. So like I didn't know that we got to like the way we talk about endangered species via birds. Like the earliest environmental protection laws were around birds, basically.
Yeah.
And so I liked piecing that together, but all of them are success stories in that the specific case, people are held accountable. They all have court cases, which also meant that I could more reliably tell these stories.
Yeah, because that's something to say is that like all of this research you've done, everything it's like credible. It's like based on
real.
it's real.
Yeah.
It's not stuff that you've had to guess at.
No,
not
everything
conjecture.
everything is established in a court, or I'm speaking to the experts who are the ones who are holding them accountable.
Let me ask you, as a criminal psychologist, having written now and researched this piece, what role do you think psychology or plays in helping fight the climate crisis?
I think we have a huge role because ultimately what you need to change is the minds of people who are in these positions where they are making a decision as to whether or not they want to harm or not the planet. And certainly in corporations, if we go back to that, you have people who are like, there will be moments where someone has in front of them a spreadsheet and they now need to decide, do we do the right thing or do we not?
Yeah.
And the question is, how do we make sure in the mind of that person, they are now going to make the right decision? And that is a question of psychology. It's also a question of finances and other things like external factors. But the thing that, as a psychologist, I'm interested in is how do we get that person to do the right thing? And so that's one point of intervention that is happening. And there are psychologists who are dealing with this. And I talk about some of them in the book. And there's quite a lot of research also in terms of not just me learning about these cases, but also researchers, so scientific research on things like biospheric values. Like how do we get people to value the planet more? How do we change behavior? How do we think about choice architecture and like how the world around us is constructed, and how do we make sure that we make better choices? How do we change our mind? Specifically related to environmental issues. And so those are all psychological pieces. What I found shocking is that basically everybody I spoke with, and I spoke with people at the UN doing this research. I spoke with criminologists, so that you veer into social science for sure. But I also spoke with lawyers, environmental lawyers. I spoke with regulators and people on the front lines. And most of them had never spoken to a psychologist. And I was like, that's a problem. We need to be talking to each other. We need to be sharing what we know from criminal psychology and other psychology to share that so that you could intervene strategically.
More effectively,
And that needs to change. We need more exchange between social scientists and earth scientists, and also we need more exchange between social scientists and policymakers.
And I would suggest social scientists and communications people.
Yeah.
because a lot of that can be driven more effectively if we understood the psychological mechanisms behind why certain things work and certain stories and certain messages work.
And again, I don't want to undersell the people who are in fact doing that already. So like Ceres Cam, who I met at the Environmental
which is such an incredible
Agency.
example.
Yeah.
Was there anything that you learned, any psychological concept, idea that you learned while you were working on this book that really kind of like surprised and delighted you?
Surprised and delighted. Oh, so many things surprised and delighted me. But one thing that I went to the UN conference on corruption, COSP.
The acronyms.
There are so many acronyms. What the heck?
Are COSP.
Yeah.
Class. I don't know.
DI.
I went to both COP and COSP, which are both UN conferences. And what I was surprised by is corruption as it was called the Universal Facilitator of Environmental Crime. And I hadn't really thought about corruption.
No.
For some reason. And as soon as it was said, I was like, oh, yeah.
That's a big... yeah, that's definitely part of it.
Yeah, and as long as you have corruption of border guards, of rangers, of police officers, of people in public officials, because that's who can be corrupted, or who is corruptible in the way we talk about corruption.
Yeah.
As long as people can be bribed, paid off, whatever, look the other way, there is going to be more environmental crime.
Yeah.
And so what they were talking about is also, and this is where psychology came in, they were talking about that we need to stop this. And my mind went, there's a whole body of research on corruptibility. And so I was learning specifically in the context of environmental crime that there is some specific research on what makes people more likely to accept bribes, including regulators. Like there's actual direct research with regulators, usually regulators who are no longer working because they'd be too worried about the consequences. And the question is, why? Well, A, were you corrupt at any point? And B, why? And the answers to why are not what you'd expect. Well, so I would expect that it's because someone was giving me some money
cash,
and so, it's cash. And that was rarely, that was part of the answer, but that was rarely the answer. A lot of it was because in my organization, my manager told me that I had to be corrupt because he wanted a cut of the bribes. He wanted a cut. Oh. He or she wanted a cut. And so the idea was that you've got in these public officials like categories, so whether it's police or regulators, you've got the manager is the crucial part of that, where they go, well, I'm corrupt and now you need to be corrupt as well. And part of that is making sure that if I get caught, you go down with me.
Yes.
So there's a bit of that like safety in numbers is like you need to be corrupt now as well, because otherwise if you tell on me, you are liability. Yeah. And the other thing is that I want my cut. And so if you don't give me my cut, I'm either not going to promote you at any point, I'm going to let you go, or I'm going to in other ways threaten you. And so they would say, even when I didn't want to accept bribes, but I literally felt like I couldn't because of the norms of my organization and also the pressure and the threats from above.
How crazy is that?
And so a lot of it isn't just also like paying people more. They were literally experiments where they're just like, what if we just pay people more? And that didn't work because as long as you have the managers being like, no, we still want our cut of the bribes.
Doesn't matter.
I could get more plus more.
Exactly.
Why would I just get more? Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
So it has to be a psychological intervention. And this is where corruptibility for me also became a really important factor that I talk about in the book, especially in the chapter on illegal mining.
Last question. I'm sure that when you're writing things like this, I would assume that when you write a book like this and you spend 3 years doing research, it has some kind of impact on you on a personal level or on a professional level in the way that you think about things and the way that you process what's going on around you in the world. Would you say there's any ways that this book has changed you, the way that you see stuff, the way that you approach things? Has it had any impact on you as a person? Writing
this book has fundamentally changed me.
Wow.
And for the better, I think, where I now understand both the environmental science behind like why we should care about various aspects of environmental crime and just what's happening in the world around us. Because I also spoke with scientists who are researching, for example, nitrous oxides, who are researching biodiversity loss, who are experts on the specific thing that's happening. And I I met all of these incredible people who are working so hard all the time, who are incredibly intelligent. And I think meeting these people, these heroes, for lack of a better word, these capable guardians, it's really inspiring, and it is really motivating, and it made me really angry at the press. Because why aren't we hearing their stories? Why don't we know about this? Why are we just getting doom and gloom when there are hundreds of thousands of people who are out there right now fighting for us? I mean, and that's just in environmental law, there's hundreds of thousands of people. Never mind in research and science and all these other categories. And so that's where I feel, frankly, reborn. I do. Like it felt hopeless before, and now it doesn't feel hopeless. And now whenever anyone says, we're doomed, I'm like, don't say that. Also, you are doing a disservice to these incredible people.
They're not hopeless.
They're not hopeless, and we're not hopeless.
They're winning.
And we need to celebrate them and not pretend that they don't exist.
I think that's absolutely right. I think we've probably felt the same on this, going into this podcast, with the same feelings you felt when you started writing this book. And now
of like there's nothing, there's no solution.
And now you're like,
oh my gosh, there's literally solutions.
There's solutions, and we can adopt them, and we can steal them from other countries. Look at what they're doing in all these different countries.
It's incredible. Julia, thank you for writing this book. Thank you for sharing these with us in these episodes and for talking with us. Green Crime is now out. You can buy it wherever you buy your books. Dr. Julia Shaw, thank you for joining us. And remember,
stay curious.